The room is silent except for the click of the projector. I sit frozen, coffee trembling in my hand, as my CEO, Tom Erickson, announces a strategic restructuring. On the slide behind him, I see my role, redlined in harsh digital marker. He doesn't meet my eyes. A younger woman, Harper, sits beside him in what used to be my chair at these meetings. Tom's words blur together like watercolors in rain. We're grateful for Natalie's service over these years. The humiliation burns through my chest like acid. My colleagues look away, suddenly fascinated by their notepads and laptops. The betrayal is public, brutal, and final. 12 years of loyalty, late nights, and record-breaking sales numbers reduced to a single PowerPoint slide. My hands shake slightly as I set down my coffee mug, the ceramic clicking too loudly against the mahogany table. Everyone hears it. The applause that follows Tom's announcement is hesitant, robotic, like they're clapping at a funeral. I force myself to smile, even though my face feels like it might crack. My voice comes out steadier than I expect when I finally speak. So, this is how 12 years ends. My pulse is thunder in my ears. Tom still won't look at me directly, his eyes sliding past mine like I'm already a ghost. The HR director, a woman named Patricia whom I've known for a decade, slides a manila folder across the table toward me. The label reads, "Transition Packet," in neat, printed letters. I feel the floor tilt beneath my chair, not just losing a job but losing my entire identity. Who am I without this place? Inside the folder, I find my severance agreement, a generic, thank you, letter that could have been written for anyone, and Harper's onboarding schedule. My onboarding schedule, really? She'll be sitting at my desk, talking to my clients, using the systems I built from nothing. The room feels too small suddenly, the air too thick. I scan the faces around the table one more time. Some look guilty. Some look relieved it's not them. Tom shuffles his papers, already moving to the next agenda item like I'm not even here anymore. Something shifts inside me, something cold and determined. I close the folder carefully, smoothing down the edges. Then I whisper under my breath, just loud enough for Patricia to hear, "This isn't over." The words replay in my mind like a movie title card. My CEO pushed me out to hire a cheaper replacement after 12 years leading sales. I take a slow breath, steadying myself as the meeting finally ends and people scatter like roaches when the lights come on. My name is Natalie Brooks. I built this company's sales department from absolutely nothing. From 3 employees and a shared desk to a team of 25 crushing quarterly targets. I landed the clients that funded Tom's fancy office renovations, and the company retreat to Cancun last year. I trained every single person who now can't meet my eyes. And 3 days later, Tom Erickson was calling me like his life depended on it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and show you exactly how we got here, how loyalty became my biggest mistake, and how walking away became my greatest power move. Because this story isn't just about getting pushed out. It's about what happens when the person holding everything together finally lets go. It's about knowing your worth when everyone else tries to discount it. And it's about poetic justice served ice cold. 12 years earlier, I was 26 with bright eyes, chipped nail polish, and an ambition that could have powered a small city. I hustled in a cramped cubicle with a wobbly chair and a view of the parking lot. Back then, the company had barely 15 employees. Tom Erickson was different then, charming, energetic, full of big ideas about disrupting the industry. He wore crisp shirts and talked about vision and growth like they were tangible things you could hold. I believed in loyalty. I worked late without being asked, arrived early without being noticed, and worshipped results like they were my religion. Tom noticed my hustle during my second week. He stopped by my cubicle one Friday evening when everyone else had gone home. I was cold calling prospects, trying to sound confident while my stomach growled. He leaned against the divider, arms crossed, watching me close a small deal. When I hung up, he smiled. "You've got something special, Natalie," he said. "Raw talent. I can work with that." He called me his secret weapon in front of the team the next Monday. I beamed with pride, believing every word. That night, he slid a glass of champagne across the table at the company dinner and said, "You'll go far here." I drank it, toasting to a future I thought was guaranteed. Success came fast after that. I landed our first major client within 3 months, a manufacturing company that tripled our revenue overnight. Then came the travel. Flights to Chicago, Boston, Seattle, pitching our services to skeptical executives who eventually signed on the dotted line. I earned record bonuses, received promotions with new titles but not always new pay, and watched our client list grow from a single page to a thick binder. But something strange happened along the way. Tom presented my numbers as his in-board meetings. He'd stand at the front of the room, clicking through slides filled with my research, my strategies, my closed deals, and say things like, "We implemented this approach," or "I developed this framework." I sat in the back, smiling anyway, telling myself that loyalty meant supporting the team, not seeking individual glory. The raises came, but the credit never quite did. Colleagues congratulated Tom on his record quarter. He'd pat my shoulder afterward, saying, "You're indispensable, Natalie." Absolutely indispensable. I believed him. I believed that being indispensable meant being protected, valued, permanent. I worked harder, stayed later, sacrificed weekends and holidays. I thought I was building security. Really, I was building his empire while mine remained invisible. The shift was subtle at first, so slow I almost missed it. Emails that used to include me suddenly didn't. Strategy meetings I'd normally lead happened without my calendar invite. I'd walk past the conference room and see Tom huddled with Harper and 2 other junior staff members, whiteboards covered in plans I knew nothing about. When I asked Tom about it, he waved me off. "Just exploratory stuff, Natalie. Nothing concrete. I'll loop you in when it matters." But it did matter. Harper started shadowing me about 6 months ago. Tom called it professional development, said she was learning the ropes from the best. She sat in on my client calls, took notes during my presentations, asked questions about my processes. At first, I didn't mind. Training the next generation felt good, important. But Harper wasn't just observing. She was studying, memorizing, preparing. She stayed late in my office even after I left for the day, going through files I never authorized her to access. "Just trying to learn the systems," she'd say with an apologetic smile. Tom encouraged it, praised her initiative. I felt something cold settle in my stomach but pushed it away. Paranoia, I told myself. Insecurity. There was no way Tom would replace me. I was indispensable, remember? He'd said so himself. Then the money went missing. Not all of it, just enough to notice. I pulled up my commission report one morning and felt my heart stop. Numbers didn't match. Deals I'd closed showed lower percentages than my contract specified. I walked to accounting, trying to stay calm, trying not to assume the worst. The accountant, a nervous man named Gary, barely looked up from his screen. "Tom's reviewing the payout structure," he said, clicking his mouse rapidly. "Should be resolved soon." My stomach twisted into knots. I'd trained myself over 12 years never to question Tom's decisions, never to rock the boat, never to appear ungrateful. But this was my money. My earned commissions from deals I'd worked nights and weekends to close. I checked the numbers again that night at home, cross-referencing my personal records with the company reports. The discrepancy was clear, $18,000 missing from my last quarter's bonus. $18,000 that had somehow evaporated into thin air. I drafted an email to Tom 3 times, deleting it each time, afraid of seeming difficult or greedy. Finally, I just requested a meeting. His assistant responded, "Tom's calendar is full this week. We'll circle back." That was 3 weeks ago. The bonus report still showed the shortage. And nobody circled back. I finally cornered Tom outside his office on a Tuesday morning. He was scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging my presence as I cleared my throat. "Tom, we need to talk about my commission report." He didn't look up, just kept tapping his screen. "We're realigning incentives across the board, Natalie. Part of the restructuring." His tone was different now. Syrupy, condescending, like he was explaining basic math to a child. "The old model wasn't sustainable. You understand." I didn't understand. My contract was clear. My numbers were documented. This wasn't about sustainability, it was about taking what I'd earned and redistributing it however he saw fit. "But my contract specifically states," I started. He finally glanced up, his expression cool and distant. "Contracts evolve, Natalie. Companies evolve. We all have to be flexible in changing markets." The words landed like punches. 12 years of loyalty, of flexibility, of putting the company first, and this was my reward? He turned toward his office door, conversation clearly over in his mind. Then he paused, looking back at me with something almost like pity. "It's not personal, Natalie," he said, voice flat and final. "It's business." The door clicked shut between us. I stood in the hallway, hands shaking, realizing with perfect clarity that I'd never really mattered to him at all. I walked back to my desk in a daze, mind spinning with that cold realization. But when I rounded the corner into my workspace, I stopped dead. Harper was sitting in my chair. My chair. At my desk. Using my computer. She glanced up, looking only slightly guilty, like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar. "Oh, hey Natalie. Tom said I could use your computer for a bit. Mine's having technical issues." My breath came shallow and fast. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidental. This had been planned, orchestrated, timed perfectly. Harper using my systems, learning my passwords, accessing my client files, it had all been preparation for this exact moment. I realized, standing there frozen in the fluorescent office lighting, that this had been planned for weeks, maybe months. The shadowing. The meetings without me. The missing commissions. The casual access to everything I'd built. Tom had been quietly erasing me, bit by bit, replacing me with a cheaper, younger version who wouldn't question him or demand what she'd earned. My hands trembled as I reached for my bag. I needed to leave before I said something I couldn't take back. But as I moved toward my desk, my computer screen flashed a message in bold red letters, "Access denied." They'd already locked me out of my own systems. 3 days later, they threw me a surprise farewell party. Store-bought cake from the grocery bakery, wilting balloons, fake smiles plastered on faces that couldn't quite hide relief or guilt. Tom stood at the front of the break room, holding a cheap champagne flute filled with sparkling cider, and gave a speech about evolution and growth and exciting new directions. Every single word sliced deeper into my pride. He thanked me for my foundational contributions, like I was a building's concrete rather than its architect. Harper stood beside him, beaming, already wearing the confidence of someone who'd claimed territory that didn't belong to her. I smiled through it all. Cutting my slice of chocolate sheet cake, nodding at colleagues' awkward well wishes, pretending my heart wasn't shattering into 1,000 pieces. Inside, I decided, they will never see me break. Not here. Not now. Not ever. As people drifted back to their desks, I returned to my computer one final time. With Patricia from HR hovering nearby, I carefully, deliberately sent myself one final email. The subject line was simple, just one word, receipts. Every client contract I'd negotiated. Every strategy document I'd authored. Every email thread proving my work. All of it, forwarded to my personal account in one massive file. Then I logged out for the last time and walked away. My official last day was a Friday. I arrived early, before anyone else, and cleaned out my desk with military precision. Personal photos, awards I'd earned, the coffee mug my team gave me for my 10th anniversary. Everything fit into one cardboard box. I left no trace of myself behind, or so they thought. But here's what Tom didn't know, what Harper couldn't have learned no matter how much she shadowed me. Every system I'd built over 12 years still required my personal authorization for critical functions. The client database I'd maintained manually, tracking every conversation and preference in a locked spreadsheet only I could access. The relationships I'd nurtured through personal calls and handwritten notes, connections that existed beyond any company server. The shortcuts and workarounds I'd developed, never documented, just muscle memory from years of making broken systems work. I didn't delete anything. That would have been sabotage, and I wasn't interested in sabotage. I was interested in justice. So instead, as my final act before walking out those doors, I changed one crucial password. The master access code to the client management system, the one that Tom had begged me to set up 3 years ago because he trusted me completely. With 3 keystrokes, I locked them out. Then I walked out of that office with my head high, my box under my arm, and my phone already buzzing with opportunities. That first night of freedom, I sat alone in my apartment drinking red wine straight from the bottle. Not classy, but honest. The anger that had burned through me all week finally gave way to something colder, sharper, calm determination. I opened my laptop and created a new document. At the top, I wrote, "Everything I know." Then I started listing client weaknesses Tom didn't know about. Contracts expiring within the next 60 days. The 3 major accounts that had stayed with us purely because of my personal relationship with their executives. Tom's blind spots, his tendency to overpromise, his habit of ignoring details, his complete lack of follow-through on anything that didn't immediately benefit him. I worked through the night, fueled by wine and vindication, documenting 12 years of institutional knowledge that existed only in my head. By sunrise, I had 17 pages. 17 pages of leverage of value, of proof that I wasn't just another employee. I was the infrastructure. Around 6 in the morning, I closed my laptop and whispered to my empty apartment, 3 days. Let's see how long they last without me. Then I finally slept, deeply and peacefully, for the first time in months. Day 1 of my freedom started with coffee and silence. No alarm clock. No panicked email checking. No Tom. Just me, my thoughts, and a strange lightness in my chest. Around 10 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Harper's name flashed across the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hey, Natalie?" Her voice had lost all its confidence, replaced by barely controlled panic. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I can't find the Q4 report template anywhere. Tom's asking for it for a client meeting in an hour." I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the moment. The Q4 report template she was looking for didn't exist in any shared drive. I'd created it from scratch each quarter, customizing it for different clients, never bothering to save a generic version because I'd always been there to make a new one. "It should be in the shared drive," I said sweetly, knowing exactly what she'd find there. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing." "I've looked everywhere," Harper said, voice climbing higher. "Tom's really stressed about this presentation." I could picture it perfectly. Tom pacing, Harper frantically clicking through folders, both realizing slowly that the systems they'd taken for granted had been held together by one person's knowledge and effort. "Sorry, can't help you," I said. "I don't work there anymore, remember?" Her next text came 10 minutes later. "Tom's asking for you." I smiled and turned off my phone. The silence felt like power. I spent the afternoon at my favorite cafe, the one with the big windows and the comfortable chairs, finally breathing air that didn't smell like desperation and betrayal. My phone stayed face down on the table, buzzing occasionally with incoming messages I had no intention of reading. I ordered lunch, a real lunch, not sad desk salad, and watched people walk by outside. Normal people with normal jobs who probably didn't spend 12 years building empires for men who'd discard them for a cheaper model. My coffee arrived, and I was raising it to my lips when someone said my name. "Natalie Brooks? Please tell me you're not gone for good." I looked up and nearly dropped my mug. Jordan Fletcher stood beside my table, briefcase in hand, concern written across his face. Jordan was one of my biggest clients, the VP of operations for a manufacturing company that did $8 million in business with us annually. With Tom's company, I corrected myself. Not us anymore. Jordan, I managed, setting down my coffee. What are you doing here? He gestured to the empty chair across from me. May I? I nodded, and he sat down heavily, like he'd been carrying something heavy all morning. I had a meeting scheduled with your company today, he said carefully. With Harper. It was a disaster, Natalie. An absolute disaster. Jordan leaned forward, keeping his voice low but urgent. She didn't know our account history. Couldn't answer basic questions about our contract terms. Kept saying she'd circle back on everything. He shook his head, frustrated. I've been working with you for 6 years. 6 years of smooth operations of you knowing exactly what we needed before we even asked. And now Tom thinks he can just replace that. Something shifted in my chest. Vindication, yes, but also possibility. Jordan wasn't just complaining. He was reaching out. The new team is clueless, he continued. 2 of my colleagues are already talking about reviewing vendor options. We stayed because of you, Natalie. The company was just the paperwork. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. I want to offer you a contract. As a consultant, not an employee. Work for yourself. Set your own terms. If you're interested, we're interested. I stared at the card, my mind racing through possibilities I hadn't let myself consider. Being my own boss. Setting my own rates. Choosing my own clients. No Tom. No corporate politics. No more being indispensable but disposable. I picked up the card slowly, meeting Jordan's eyes. My voice came out steady, certain. I think I just might. Day 2 of my new life, and Tom's world was apparently crumbling. I heard about it through Stephanie, a former colleague who'd always been kind to me. She texted me that afternoon, "It's chaos here. Total chaos." According to Stephanie, emails were bouncing because Harper didn't know the client contact protocols. 3 major clients were threatening to leave because their calls weren't being returned properly. Harper had apparently been found crying in the restroom after a particularly brutal call with an angry executive. And Tom was blaming everything on technical issues and transition complications, refusing to admit he'd made a catastrophic mistake. The department I'd built and maintained for over a decade was falling apart in less than 48 hours. Systems I'd kept running through sheer knowledge and determination were failing. Relationships I'd nurtured through personal attention were dissolving. Tom had thought he could replace 12 years of expertise and dedication with a cheap alternative and some wishful thinking. He was learning otherwise. My phone started buzzing again around 3 in the evening. Tom Erickson calling. I watched his name flash across my screen, felt a small surge of satisfaction, and let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then silence. Voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I was too busy drafting a business plan for Brooks Consulting Group. My company. My rules. My future. Tom called again the next morning. And the morning after that. Each time, I watched his name appear on my screen, felt that small thrill of power, and declined the call. The 4th time he called, I did something even better. I blocked his number completely. Let him figure out how to reach me through official channels if it was really that important. Let him feel what it's like to be ignored, dismissed, treated like you don't matter. My reflection in my phone screen looked different lately. Stronger somehow. Less apologetic. I'd spent 12 years making myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating. Swallowing my pride, accepting less credit, taking smaller bonuses without complaint. All because I thought loyalty would protect me. But loyalty is only valuable when it flows both directions. Tom had shown me his version of loyalty, use people until they ask for too much, then replace them with cheaper models. Well, now he was learning the cost of that strategy. I spent the afternoon setting up my LLC paperwork, choosing a logo, creating a simple website. Nothing fancy yet, just professional enough to show I was serious. By evening, I had business cards ordered and a consultation rate that made my old salary look like pocket change. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Not Tom this time. Jordan, with a formal contract offer and a list of 3 other executives who wanted to meet with me. I smiled and hit reply. The following week moved like a dream. Jordan introduced me to 2 more clients from his network, both companies that had either worked with Tom's firm before or were considering it. Both said the exact same thing: if you're in, we're in. Word was spreading through the industry faster than I'd expected. Natalie Brooks was available. Natalie Brooks was consulting independently. Natalie Brooks was the one you actually wanted, not the company she used to work for. One executive pulled me aside after a preliminary meeting and said quietly, "We always knew you were the real talent there. Tom just took the credit." The validation felt better than any bonus check. By Friday, I had enough potential contracts to match my old annual salary. By the following Monday, I'd doubled it. I signed the incorporation papers at a coffee shop, my hands steady and certain. Brooks Consulting Group was officially real. No more working for someone else's dreams. No more building someone else's empire. This was mine. That evening, I received an email from Harper. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I opened it, curious. She'd written 3 paragraphs apologizing for taking my position, saying she didn't realize what she was stepping into, admitting that the job was impossible and Tom had set her up to fail just like he'd set me up to leave. I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I didn't respond. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it. Meanwhile, back at Tom's company, things went from bad to catastrophic. Stephanie sent me updates like dispatches from a sinking ship. Tom called a full-staff emergency meeting on a Wednesday morning. Someone recorded it and sent it to half the company within an hour. In the video, Tom's face was red, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage as he shouted about loyalty and sabotage and people not being team players. He blamed the failing accounts on Harper's inexperience, on the clients being unreasonable, on market conditions, everything except his own terrible decisions. HR was apparently in the corner taking notes, looking deeply concerned. Several employees could be seen exchanging worried glances. This wasn't leadership. This was a meltdown. The next morning, Harper quietly submitted her resignation. According to Stephanie, she walked into Tom's office at 8 in the morning, placed a single sheet of paper on his desk, and walked out without saying a word. She'd lasted less than 3 weeks in my old position. 3 weeks to realize what I'd maintained for 12 years. 3 weeks to understand that some jobs can't be done by just anyone, no matter how cheap their salary is. Tom was now down both his experienced sales director and her replacement, with major accounts actively shopping for new vendors. The company I'd helped build was hemorrhaging clients, revenue, and reputation. And I was across town, signing my 4th consulting contract. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Sender, Tom Erickson. Subject, urgent, can we talk? I stared at it for a long moment, finger hovering over the delete button. Part of me wanted to read it, to see him grovel. To watch him admit he'd made a mistake. But a bigger part of me knew that reading it would give him power, would let him back into my headspace, would open a door I'd worked hard to close. I deleted it without opening it. Watched it disappear into the digital trash. Felt absolutely nothing. 3 hours later, another email arrived. This one from Tom's boss, the board member who technically owned the company Tom ran. The subject line read, "Urgent matter, Natalie Brooks." My stomach flipped. This was different. Official. Potentially legal. I opened it carefully, scanning the text. It was surprisingly respectful. The board had become aware of significant operational challenges following my departure. They wanted to discuss a potential consulting arrangement to help stabilize key accounts during this transition period. The proposed rate was astronomical, triple what Tom had paid me as an employee. I read it twice, then sat back in my chair, processing. They were panicking. The board had finally noticed that Tom's cost-cutting measure was costing them millions. And now they wanted me to fix it. On my terms. For my price. I didn't respond immediately. Let them wait. Let them worry. Let them wonder if I'd even consider coming back. Power, I was learning, was often just strategic silence. I finally responded to the board member 3 days later with a carefully worded email outlining my terms. Yes, I'd consult on a limited basis to help transition key accounts. No, I wouldn't work with Tom directly. Yes, my rate was non-negotiable. No, I wouldn't sign any non-compete agreements. Take it or leave it. They took it within 2 hours. The contract arrived that afternoon, signed and ready. I read every word twice, had a lawyer friend review it, then signed. My first day back in the building was surreal. Walking through that lobby, past the reception desk where the same woman who'd smiled at me for 12 years now looked at me with something like awe. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a consultant. A hired expert. Someone they needed more than I needed them. Stephanie met me at the elevator, grinning. "You're a legend around here now," she whispered. "Everyone's talking about how Tom destroyed the department in 2 weeks." I rode up to the 5th floor, walked past my old desk, now empty again, and straight into the conference room where 3 panicked executives waited. No Tom. He'd been conspicuously uninvited to this meeting. I set down my briefcase, pulled out my laptop, and got to work saving accounts I'd built while they scrambled to take notes. By the end of that first day, I'd stabilized 2 major clients and identified exactly where Tom's approach had failed. The executives looked exhausted but relieved. I felt powerful. That evening, Stephanie texted me, "Tom was told to take a leave of absence. The board is furious." I smiled and typed back, 3 days. Exactly like I predicted. My phone rang early the next morning. Jordan's name flashed on the screen, and I answered immediately. "You ready for your first really big contract?" he asked, excitement clear in his voice. He explained quickly, his company was expanding operations, needed a complete sales strategy overhaul, and wanted me to lead it. 6-month contract. Flexible schedule. Creative control. And a fee that made my eyes water. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Absolutely yes." We met for lunch that afternoon to sign the paperwork. As I reviewed the contract terms, I felt something shift permanently inside me. This wasn't just about revenge or proving Tom wrong. This was about building something real, something sustainable, something mine. I signed with a steady hand, feeling like I was signing my own Declaration of Independence. After lunch, I checked my phone and saw a notification. My new office lease had been approved. I'd found the perfect space the week before. Modern, bright, with big windows and room to grow. And it was located directly across the street from Tom's building. I hadn't planned that specifically, but the universe had a sense of irony I appreciated. From my new office windows, I'd have a perfect view of the place that had tried to erase me. Every morning, I'd see that building and remember how far I'd come. Every evening, I'd watch people leave and know I'd made the right choice. The news broke on a Thursday morning. Tom Erickson steps down as CEO amid leadership transition. The company's official statement cited differing visions for the company's future direction and thanked Tom for his years of service. But anyone in the industry knew what really happened. He'd gambled on replacing experience with cost savings and lost spectacularly. 2 major clients had formally withdrawn their accounts. 3 others were in active negotiations to leave. The board had watched their revenue projections crater in real time and made the only logical decision. Tom was out. Stephanie called me within minutes of the announcement. The office is buzzing, she said. People are actually celebrating quietly. Nobody liked him, Natalie. They were just scared to say it. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief. Vindication. But not exactly joy. I hadn't wanted to destroy Tom or ruin the company. I just wanted to be treated fairly, to be valued, to be compensated for the work I did. Tom had destroyed himself through his own arrogance and short-sighted greed. I'd simply stopped enabling him. That evening, I stood at the window of my new office, looking across the street at the building that used to define my identity. The lights were still on in Tom's old office, someone else's problem now. I whispered to my reflection in the glass, poetic justice doesn't need applause. It just needs truth. Then I turned back to my desk, to my work, to my future. 6 weeks into running Brooks Consulting Group, my new office hummed with productive energy. I'd hired 2 assistants, brought on a junior consultant to help with overflow work, and had a waiting list of potential clients. The space I'd designed was everything my old cubicle wasn't: bright, open, collaborative. One morning, Harper walked through my door carrying 2 coffees. I looked up in surprise. She'd emailed me a week earlier asking if we could meet. I'd been hesitant but curious enough to agree. I brought a peace offering, she said, setting 1 coffee in front of me. She looked different, less polished, more genuine. Tired. I wanted to apologize in person, Harper continued, sitting down across from my desk. And to ask if you're hiring. I studied her face carefully. She looked sincere, maybe even humbled by her brief time in my old role. What happened after I left? I asked. She exhaled slowly. I realized within 2 days that Tom had set me up to fail. He gave me your job but none of your resources, none of your relationships, none of your support. I was drowning. She paused. It feels different when the boss actually listens, actually supports you. I want to work somewhere real. I considered her request. She'd been a pawn in Tom's game, just like I had been. Maybe she deserved a second chance in a healthier environment. I'll think about it, I said finally. She nodded, accepting that, and we talked for another hour about consulting, about clients, about building something that mattered. When she left, I felt something unexpected: hope. Not for revenge, but for creating something better. Today, 3 months after walking out of Tom's company for the last time, I stand at my office window with my morning coffee and reflect on everything that's changed. Brooks Consulting Group has 12 active clients, 4 of them former accounts from Tom's firm. Revenue has exceeded my most optimistic projections. My team has grown to 5 people, all of them talented professionals who'd been undervalued elsewhere. And across the street, Tom's old company is still struggling to recover, though I hear they've brought in new leadership who's trying to rebuild what was lost. I don't gloat about Tom's downfall. Honestly, I barely think about him anymore. He's a lesson I learned, not a wound I carry. The real victory isn't his failure, it's my success. It's proving to myself that I could build something from nothing, again, but this time on my own terms. My phone buzzes with a text from Jordan: lunch next week? Want to introduce you to a potential partner. I smile and reply yes. A courier arrives with a package. Inside, I find a beautiful orchid arrangement with no card, no note. I don't know who sent it, but I set it on my desk where the light hits it perfectly. As I settle into my chair to start the day's work, I think about everything I want to say to anyone who's ever felt undervalued, dismissed, or replaced. Know your worth. Document your contributions. Protect your knowledge. And understand this: they didn't build what you built. They can't replace what you are. The moment you realize that is the moment you become truly free. I didn't ruin Tom. I just stopped saving him. And sometimes, that's all it takes. If you enjoy the story, subscribe, like and share.